Ambassador Vexthra had studied humanity for 3 years before setting foot on Earth's soil. 3 years of files. 3 years of reports. 3 years of warnings from every species that had ever shared a star system with them. None of it prepared her for the smile. The Kaleys Compact had survived 400 years without a single war. Not because they were weak, the Compact fielded fleets that could dust a planet in an afternoon, but because every species in it followed one rule. Know your neighbor before you trust your neighbor. So when the humans applied for provisional membership, the Compact did what it always did. It sent an ambassador to observe. Quietly, patiently, for as long as it took. Vexthra was the best they had. Cold-blooded, in the literal sense, her species ran 3 degrees below human body temperature, and in the figurative sense too. She had negotiated ceasefires between species who wanted each other extinct. She did not rattle. She landed in a place called Geneva, in a building full of humans in gray suits, and within 11 minutes, she asked to see the head of security. "Is something wrong, Ambassador?" the liaison asked. "Your Secretary General," Vexthra said. He smiled at me. 3 times. The liaison blinked. "That's normal. It's a greeting." It was not a greeting the first time. He smiled when the trade numbers came in below projection. He smiled when your delegate from the Eastern Bloc raised her voice. And he smiled just now, when I told him the Compact was reconsidering your admission timeline. The liaison, whose name was Marcus, actually laughed. And that was worse. "Ambassador, I think you're overthinking a facial expression." Vexthra did not overthink things. She catalogued them. Every species she had ever studied wore its emotions on the outside, more or less honestly. The Dralic hissed when threatened. The communion glowed dimmer when grieving. Even the stone-faced corveth had subtle tells, a stiffening of the neck ridges before violence. Humans smiled. They smiled when they were happy. Fine. Expected. But they also smiled when they were furious, barely restraining themselves in a boardroom. They smiled when they delivered devastating news to each other with perfect calm. A doctor had smiled, while telling a patient's family that the surgery had failed. A soldier in a documentary archive had smiled directly into a camera 3 hours before a battle that killed half his unit. Vexthra pulled 200 hours of footage. She built a taxonomy. She counted 17 distinct smiles that all used the same 11 facial muscles, and she could not tell most of them apart without context. That was the part that scared her, if she was being honest with herself, which she rarely was. A weapon you can't identify is a weapon you can't defend against. She requested an audience with General Adiz Okafor, the human military liaison to the Compact talks. Vexthra had chosen her specifically. Okafor's file was the most unsettling of anyone she'd studied. 31 years of service. Command in 4 conflicts. Universally described by her own people as warm, approachable, the nicest person in the room. She had also, according to the same file, ended a hostage standoff by walking in alone, unarmed, smiling the entire time, and talking a man with a detonator into putting it down. "You wanted to see me, Ambassador?" Okafor said, settling into the chair across from her. And there it was. The smile. Easy. Open. Completely unreadable. "I want to understand something," Vexthra said. "On my world, an expression this consistent, deployed in this many contradictory situations, would mean one thing. Total emotional suppression. A trained mask." "That's a fair guess," Okafor said. "It's wrong, but it's fair." "Then explain it to me. Why do you smile at good news and bad news? Why did your doctor smile while breaking a family's heart? Why did your soldier smile before what he must have known might be his last battle?" Okafor was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, the smile didn't leave, but something underneath it shifted, and Vexthra, who had spent 40 years learning to read faces that weren't hers, still couldn't name what she was seeing. "Ambassador, do you know what the smile is for?" "For expressing happiness. That's what it's for in the biology textbooks. That's not what it's for out here." Okafor leaned forward. "The smile isn't a report on how we feel. It's a message to the person in front of us. Says, I see you. I'm still here. Whatever is happening, you are not alone in it. Even in combat?" especially in combat. You want to know why that soldier smiled before a battle he might not survive? Because the men next to him needed to see that someone wasn't falling apart. The smile wasn't a lie about how he felt. It was a promise about how he'd act. Vexthra sat with that for a long time after the meeting ended. She had spent 3 years treating the human smile as a data point to be decoded. A tell, a signal, a piece of a puzzle that would eventually reveal what humans were really feeling underneath. She had assumed, the way every good analyst assumes, that the true information was hidden and the expression was the disguise. But Okafor hadn't described a mask. She'd described a choice, made over and over in hospitals and battlefields and boardrooms, by people who understood something Vexthra's entire species had never needed to learn. That in a species without claws, without venom, without armor plating, the only real weapon, and the only real shield had always been each other. The smile wasn't the absence of fear. It was fear, acknowledged and set aside, offered to someone else as proof they didn't have to carry it alone. Scene. The report, her final assessment to the Compact Council, ran 400 pages. The section on humans took up half of it. Recommendation. Proceed with extreme caution regarding provisional membership, she wrote, and then crossed it out. Recommendation. Proceed with full membership on an accelerated timeline, she wrote instead. Species assessment. Emotionally transparent by design, but only to those willing to look past the first read. Humans do not hide their feelings behind the smile. They hide their fear behind it and then hand you the courage instead. A species that has weaponized comfort and aims it at friend and stranger alike is not a species you want as an enemy. It is a species you want standing next to you when everything goes wrong. She paused before the last line, then added it anyway. I did not understand the smile when I arrived. I am not certain I understand it now, but I have stopped being afraid of it. I have started being afraid of what happens to anyone foolish enough to make an enemy of a species that smiles hardest exactly when the fight gets worst. 3 months later, the Compact voted. Provisional membership granted unanimously, the fastest approval in 400 years of history. Vexthra stayed on Earth as the permanent liaison. She still couldn't always tell the difference between a happy smile and a furious one. But 6 months into her posting, during a diplomatic dinner that went sideways when a rival delegation tried to sabotage the humans' trade agreement in front of the entire council, she watched General Okafor stand up, look the saboteur dead in the eye and smile. And for the first time, Vexthra understood exactly what it meant. It meant, you have no idea what you just started.